This week, we're headed to Ohio to visit with Mark Meeker, who's the executive director of the National Whitetail Deer Education Foundation and Deerassic. Deerassic has been collecting some of the biggest whitetails to ever walk the state of Ohio, and you get to check out their brand new education center. There are so many incredible stories and whitetails at Deerassic that we're breaking up into two parts. Part one features one of the biggest 8-pointers to ever walk the face of the earth. Let's get into it. Here we go.
Hey, welcome to the Ohio Whitetail Hall of Fame. So this collection here, the Ohio Whitetail Hall of Fame, we've been collecting these antlers for the last 25, 30 years. I'm pretty excited. These are all the giants from here in Ohio. Everything's either been killed or found right here in the state of Ohio. So this buck right here is the Bill Nellinger buck. Bill shot this actually just a couple miles down the road from here at Jurassic Park, and I was actually lucky enough to be with Bill with the recovery. He called me and a couple other friends after he shot it. It was raining, and so he needed needed some hands to go try to find the buck. So one of those cool experiences to have this buck here. Bill is a big supporter of Jurassic Park. Him and his business, Cambridge Packaging, have been big supporters over the years. So it's really cool to have that thing here in the Hall of Fame on display. So the Nellinger buck scores 203 inches. That's the BTR, which is the Buckmaster scoring, and is one of the largest deer that was shot back in 2019 here in Ohio. This buck right here is the Mike McCabe Buck. So Mike shot this back in 2013. I've been friends with Mike since probably 2006. So I knew that he was hunting this deer back in 2013. Mike McCabe is a very well-known hunter. He was a host of Sportsman of North America back in right before this, about late 2000s. Mike has shot a 200-inch deer before, but this one is a little bigger. It scores 220 and 7/8 for the BTR and 212 and 3/8 for Boone and Crocket. But Mike's story with this is kind of incredible. So Mike hunts in a wheelchair now after a hunting accident, but he's the hardest core hunter I've ever met in my life. Well, he had this buck out here and he shoots it. Well, he looked everywhere for days, couldn't find it. He thought he hit him good. And they lost the blood trail, couldn't find it. And he said he was out there looking, I think it was 3 days after he shot the deer. And he was scrolling through Facebook. Well, here pops his deer. It's a deadhead. And it was somebody that hunts on his neighbor's property. Well, Mike and his neighbor didn't get along real great. And I'm sure Mike can tell you the whole story if you ever run into him. Eventually, Mike was able to work out a deal, and he was able to get his buck back. So it's pretty exciting. I know this was something that was a lot of highs and lows with this, just like every hunter has. But, to have a 220-inch deer, you shoot it and you can't find it. And then it's just crazy that, him sitting there taking a break in the woods looking through Facebook, he's able to somehow get in contact with it and have it to display in his house and stuff. But pretty cool deer. All right, so the next buck we have here is the Pfankuch buck. And this was shot back in 1995 down in Ross County. And this thing scored 262 and 0/8 inches for BTR, for the Buckmasters. But this thing's got 7 drop tines, just an incredible buck. But Paint Creek Lake State Park down in Ross County is where Jay was hunting during shotgun season. He was sitting actually on the lake bed. So this is where the water usually is up in the summertime and they drain the lake. And he heard gunshots. And of course, if anybody's hunted state ground like myself, when you hear gunshots, you start looking around everywhere because you know something's coming. Especially when you hear 4 or 5 gunshots, you know that's probably not a good shot and they're just shooting at something running. Well, he looked up and here comes this buck comes down through. And so he got his gun ready, shoots at 80 yards, misses it. The deer kept running. He got another shell on it, shoots, hits it right in the heart and drops it. Just an incredible deer. Another one of those deer that you can tell the kids, you don't have to have all this public, this private ground to go hunting on. You can just go on the state grounds around here. You never know what's living in the woods out there. So just an incredible deer for somebody to be able to shoot. And like I said, just to go out on state lands and to be able to find something like that and to harvest that animal. All right, the next buck we have up here is the Paul Hessler buck. So this was from back in 1963. So some of these bucks is kind of cool to see because, after Mike Beatty shot his buck in 2000, that's when people are like, oh man, Ohio has some big deer up there. And then, the last, 10, 15 years, all of a sudden it's starting to be, man, there's some giants in Ohio. You don't need to go to Illinois or all the way, farther out west. As you can see from some of these other ones we'll get to, but this was from back in 1963. There's always been big deer here in Ohio. This buck was shot in Perry County during shotgun season. And, I didn't know much about this deer when we got it in because we bought it from another collector. But I had a gentleman come up here a couple years ago, and before I even had to sign up, he said, is that the Hessler buck? And I said, yeah, how'd you know that? And he started telling me a story from back in 1963. It was his great-grandpa actually hunted with Paul. And there was a group of them that were hunting this deer. And it's a long story. I'm not sure how much of it's true or embellished over the years because it's been, 50, 60 years. But apparently the guys that were hunting it, they were going to come back because they knew that deer was in there and they've shot at him a couple times. And they went to lunch. And when they came back, they thought Paul was going home for lunch. Well, when they got back, Paul was putting this in the back of their pickup truck. So I think there was a couple friendships lost after that. But as you can see, it's an incredible deer. It's got almost like that third beam that comes out. He might not be the highest scoring deer. He's 190 and 1/8 inches Boone and Crocket and 217 BTR. But and absolutely just a monster of a deer. So this next buck, and this is an older replica, you can see from the kind of the yellow shit. This is the David Dole buck that was shot back in 1987. And this thing scored 249 inches for Boone and Crocket, 269 3/8 for Buckmaster's BTR. This buck's got a little bit of everything. It's just got points everywhere. It's just kind of a massive blob, it almost looks like. He's got almost matching drop tines on both sides, but just an incredible deer, just how it lays back and everything like that. I don't have a whole lot of a story with this, but it's definitely one of the top 15 bucks that have ever been killed here in Ohio. Another one of the newer additions to the collection here is a buck they call Bowinkle. Bowinkle was found. It was hit by a car down in Jackson, Ohio back in 1987. And the BTR score on this was 253 4/8 inches. This buck is another one that surprised me once we got it. Whenever I purchased this off Klaus Lebrecht by Antlers by Klaus, he had this buck that he was able to make a replica for us. And when it came out of the box, it was a lot bigger than what I thought it looked like in a picture. Just the massive, the 33 inches wide, just with his drop tines. Pretty incredible deer. It's too bad that it was hit by a car. It's too bad a hunter wasn't able to get him, but definitely one of the top bucks here in Ohio. So here's one of the bucks in our collection. This is probably the oldest buck we have in the collection here. This was shot by Paul Lehman back in 1948. So one of those things where I tell you that, we've had these giants here in Ohio for years, but this buck was shot 75 years ago, and it scored 244 4/8 the BTR for Buckmasters, and Boone and Crocket is 225 2/8. It's got a lot of unique features to it, especially over here. It looks like possibly there was damage on his right side of his main beam, so it kind of created that hole in that pocket. Something really neat and unique to this different buck that we have. But one of the giants, like I said, shot back in the 1940s. So we like having that on display just so people can see deer from that long. And who knows with this story? This is probably one of those ones that was sitting in a barn for 30, 40 years, very similar to like the hole in the horn buck that nobody ever knew about. So how many other bucks from back in the 30s and 40s and 50s that we never get to see? So that's why we wanted to make this collection, so we can kind of keep and preserve some of these giants from all over the years. This next buck is a buck that was shot by Ron Osborne back in 1986, and this is called the Junior Hole in the Horn buck. So I never knew that Ron shot it. I remember seeing this at Cabela's and thinking it was just the Junior Hole in the Horn. And, this is one of the top 15 bucks in Ohio. And you could see, of course, why it has the junior hole in the horn. Now, if you put it next to it, it really looks like a junior. But it's, like I said, still scoring 254 or 50 4/8 inches for Buckmaster's BTR, and Boone and Crocket 246 inches. But he's got drop tines everywhere, just kind of more of a massive deer. So the next buck we have is the Owen buck. Mark, or Buck Owen, is the one who shot this. And I'll never forget when this deer was shot back in 2013, because this was 2013 was right when, everybody had their phones, that they were getting pictures, and you got emails, and everything was, really blowing up when it came to big bucks. And when he shot this thing, because it was the first weekend of the year, actually, he shot it on the Monday when season started. But I remember my phone just absolutely blew up with, is this deer real? Is this deer real? Because from the pictures, he looked like he was 400 inches. He shot this over in Wayne County, which is up by Worcester, Ohio. This thing's BTR was 256 inches for Buckmasters, and Boone and Crocket was 249 inches. And this deer, so Mark was working with a guy, and they became pretty good friends. The guy told him he wanted to get back into hunting. So Mark was saying, like, hey, I'll help you set up trail cameras, set up tree stands, and, just to get the guy involved. So they did that. he came back when he was working with the guy. He came back and with the farmer, and they found like a really nice 9-pointer on camera. So, they were kind of focused on that. So they were setting stands up and everything. Right before the season happened, this buck showed up, and they called him Caveman because of the club. So they called this one Caveman. Well, Mark told the guy that first weekend that he wanted to come out and film the guy shoot this. Well, this farmer didn't really care about the size of the rack because he just was looking to go hunting and to just to get meat for the freezer and stuff like that. So he told Mark that first week that Mark was able to go hunt this farm and go hunt this deer. So Mark went out there, didn't see him on Saturday. He couldn't hunt on Sunday. And then on Monday night, this buck was able to come in. He was able to put a great shot on him. But really cool deer with this giant club that comes down. And all the points, like I said, he's only 15.5 inches wide and still going 256 inches. So, all right. So the next buck we have is Raquel Domenico buck. She shot this back in 2017. This was the largest deer shot in 2017 by a female. This buck was shot in Lorain County, and its BTR score was 205 and 5/8. Its Boone and Crocket was 199 and 3/8. But like I said, this is the largest buck that we have in our collection that was shot by a female here at Jurassic Park. All right, the next buck it's called, Rich Ewing is the one who found this buck, but people know it as the Sweetie buck. So it's known as the Sweetie buck because back in 2011, Rich owned a German Shepherd, a 5-year-old German Shepherd called Sweetie. And Sweetie was running around the farm. It would always, going everywhere. Well, it came up on this deadhead here. And so this buck was found Ashtabula County, and its BTR score is 271, and its Boone and Crocket is 263 and 4/8. Just a massive deer. Another one of those cool ones to tell the kids hey, go out in the woods. You never know what you're going to find. This is a once in a lifetime buck that, everybody would love to find it. Dogs running around, let the dogs go out and maybe your dog will walk around the woods and try to find a 270 inch deer like this. So he's pretty lucky. Better have give that dog a couple treats whenever he came back after finding that thing. So Doug Kissamore shot this buck in 2016. He actually shot this up in Portage County. It was actually up near 10-point crossbows, and he actually shot it with a 10-point crossbow. But this buck, its BTR score was 240 and 2/8 inches, and Boone and Crocket is 216 and 5/8. It's an incredible deer. He actually has 5 brow tines just kind of lined straight up, and on both sides, his right side's a little bit more defined as far as the height of his brow tines. A pretty incredible deer. He shot this late. I talked to Doug, and he shot this late season. I mean, there was snow all over the ground, and he stayed out and waited till the perfect day to go hunt this buck that he had on camera, which I don't know about you, but if I had a 240-inch deer, it'd be hard to keep me out of the woods all the time. He was able, patience paid off for him, and he was able to harvest this buck. So this buck right here is the Kaiser buck. Jeff Kaiser shot this. This is actually just up in Holmes County, just a couple counties up from here. And Jeff shot this. The BTR score is 251 and 7/8 inches, and Boone and Crocket is 244 inches. Now, Jeff was only 17 at the time when he shot this. He was a senior in high school over at Apple Creek. He bought a used compound bow. This was actually his first year of bow hunting is when he went out there. So it kind of ruins you if you shoot that as your first archery deer. But Jeff went out, and it was one of the first sits that he ever had, and he was able to connect on this buck. He's got junk just everywhere, and the same with him is just the mass on this buck. Pretty lucky for your first deer. Kind of ruins you for the rest of your life, I think, as far as how are you going to go back out and hunt and be like, no, my first deer was 250 some inches. My next deer, are you going to be able to shoot that 140 inch 10-pointer walks by? So our next buck is Luke Lohan, and Luke he's 19 years old. So we got a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old right next to each other. Luke shot this in 2017. It was actually kind of cool because as soon as Luke shot this, I was able to get a hold of him. He actually came out here to Jurassic Park, and Ed Waite from Buckmasters came out and officially scored it. Because with Buckmasters, with the BTR scoring that we've been saying, there's no drying period for BTR and for Buckmasters. Now, Boone and Crocket, there's a 60-day drying period. His BTR was 221 and 5/8, and his Boone and Crocket score was 209 and 7/8. He had a lot of history with this buck. He shot it with a crossbow that he had. He's been hunting for 3 years. This deer was on his trail camera all the time. He showed me hundreds of pictures of it. So even though he was a younger hunter, I mean, he was absolutely obsessed with this deer, so it was really cool. He shot this actually the first week of the 2017 season. So another buck that we have that's a very popular buck that a lot of people know about is the Haney Buck. And so this buck was shot back in 1987 by Bob with his shotgun in Mahoning County. And its BTR score is 206 and 4/8. It's just crazy because if you look at it, it is an 8-point frame. This is actually it's considered a drop tine, and he has a big split on that brow back there. But Bob shot that buck, which, like I said, for an 8-point frame, it's incredible, the size of it. His G2s and stuff, you're looking at 15, 16 inches, but just a massive deer that, like I said, has been very well known over the years as far as when you look at an 8-point frame, there's nothing that gets better than that deer. So a couple of these other bucks that we have here on the bottom, these are shot by Steve and Scott Esker. There's 2 of them shot by Scott Esker and 1 by Steve. And actually we have 4 more over on the other side. These brothers are from in Columbus, Ohio. And they're very well known here in Ohio. They shoot giants, and they have 7 deer over 200 inches between the both of them. But they're really cool to have all 7 of their 200-inch deer here at the Hall of Fame for people to see. This was the latest one, was back in 2017, and Scott was able to shoot this buck. And just the mass that he has on him, he's about 6 inches, 7 inches all the way around, and just an incredible deer. Scott shot that with his crossbow. And like I said, most of these are Fairfield, Franklin County, right around the Columbus area. Another deer I want to show you guys is the Jim Koger buck. So Jim shot this back in 2013. The cool thing about this buck was when I was at the ATA show back in 2013, I think we were down in Louisville, Kentucky. And we were down there and there's a whole group of people, everybody in the industry. And somebody said, "Hey, Mark, have you seen this deer?" And so they called me over and there was a group of people there. They started showing me this trail camera picture of this buck. And I was like, "No, I've never seen that deer." I said, "Who shot him?" And they're like, "Nobody shot him yet. He's still alive." Well, then you got everybody down there being like, where's he at? Can I come hunt him? Because we still had a couple weeks left here in the Ohio season. The thing with this buck is he was everywhere. So I didn't know Jim at the time, but I've got to know Jim since then. But talking to Jim, he got this buck early in the season on his trail camera and was all excited about it. Well, then he disappeared and he didn't want to tell anybody about this buck. A couple weeks into season, his neighbor starts telling him about this buck and shows a trail camera picture. Then, the whole area, I think it was, I heard it was from 7 miles, they had pictures of this buck. So he was a wanderer. To think that this deer lasted all season in 2000, and actually it was 2012, 2013 season. This buck showed back up on Jim's cameras towards the end of season. That's when most people stop hunting, but that's sometimes the best time to shoot some of these big bucks. So Jim had him on camera. And it was Super Bowl Sunday. I think it was February 3rd, last day of the season for Ohio archery. And Jim went out there and hunted, and this buck came in, and he was walking in, got spooked, ran away, and Jim thought, well, there's my opportunity. I just blew it. And out of nowhere, here he comes right back. Comes right down in. Jim was able to make a great shot on him. So that was shot in Delaware County over by Columbus. Its BTR was 226 and 7/8. Its Boone and Crocket is 213 and 4/8. But cool deer. It was really cool seeing like the trail camera pictures and all the buzz that happened at the ATA show about that. And then just a couple weeks later, somebody was able to harvest it. I've told you a lot about deer that I say, oh, this is one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite. This for sure 100% is my favorite deer that we have in our whole collection. This buck right here, I know he doesn't look like he fits in here, but this is Drake Taylor shot this buck. So if you've been in the outdoor industry or a lot of trade shows in the Midwest, you might have ran across Drake. 2012 is whenever he shot this, but I've known Drake for years before that. And Drake used to have, it was called Little D Designs, and they made necklaces and stuff, and him and his parents would sell them at our shows. And he used to always tell me once he turned 18, he was going to be able to come out to Jurassic Park, to the Deerassic Classic that we have, and he wanted to sell stuff out there. Right after he turned 18, he was actually drawn for the Physically Challenged Bow Hunters of America hunt, the PCBA hunt that we host out here at Jurassic Park. Now, we do not hunt in our pens. We hunt local farmers' fields and everything, but Drake was able to come. And so it was fun to have somebody, he's from Illinois, him and his family, and they came out. Absolute blast. If you got to meet him, he'd put a smile on everybody's face that he meets. So he went out on the second night, and all I got was a text from his dad that said, Drake just shot a buck. So I called him. And Drake tells me he shot an 11-pointer. I was like, did you really? He's like, oh yeah, I shot an 11-pointer. He's awesome. And so Drake gets back here. They pull out of the truck. They pull this thing out. I didn't know what it was at first. It was actually a hermaphrodite. You know, it actually had both male and female parts. And it has this little spike buck. But he told me it's 11 points. That's what he just kept putting his hand up. He said, that's 11. Drake, you know, we had a lot of fun with him that hunt. Drake left here. He was battling health issues for his whole life. Passed away about 3 weeks after he came and shot that deer. I'm still friends with his parents. After he passed away, they talked, and I said, is there any way we can take that deer and put him in the Hall of Fame? And at first they thought I was crazy. They're like, why would you want that in here? Like I said, that's my favorite deer out of everything that I've ever collected, just because of Drake. It was his last hunt he ever got to go on, but a really cool memory. I have it all here. It's a great story to tell people when they come and ask. They're like, why is that little buck there? But to me, that means the most out of anything in the collection. All right, so not only do we have the Ohio Whitetail Hall of Fame and all that great collection in there, but we also have our live deer herd, where you can stop out, see the does. We got some of our bucks in the back, but it's a great time to bring the kids out, kind of get to interact up close and personal with some of these deer.